Welcome to Thrive and Advance podcast, where we help you make business growth predictable, profitable, and enjoyable. I'm your host, Dr. Shoureh Aftahi, and I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, Michael Gelb. Michael is a speaker, an author, and an executive coach. He's a pioneer in the field of creative thinking, innovative leadership, and executive coaching. Welcome to our show, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And please tell us more about you. There is so much in your background and your bio that I think you're the best person to talk about it.
Well, see, what's in my background are all these books. And what's in your background are all those books.
Right.
The difference is yours seem to be better organized than mine. I'm very impressed with your bookshelf.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I have a basement full of boxes of books that I just don't have room to put them out.
It's a good sign. And right in the center there behind me are the books that I've actually written. And then all these other ones are the ones that I've read that helped me be able to write these.
Wonderful. Yes, tell us more.
Well, I've always been interested in creativity. It seemed to me that human progress is a function of creative thinking. And I was kind of amazed that school doesn't teach you how to think creatively. I mean, there used to be things like art class or music class, and unfortunately that's gone in much of the contemporary world. But that's not what I mean by creativity, as much as that's wonderful for all of us to explore and share with our children. I mean the skill of generating new original ideas. It always seemed to me so important to be able to generate new and original ideas. So I was fascinated, well, how do you do this? And I've just been studying it and writing about it for many years. So that's really the beginning of the quest that has led to, well, first, okay, if you want to generate ideas that have subjective value, that's creativity. You also want to generate ideas that have objective value. That's innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So creativity is necessary for innovation, but it's not sufficient. Innovation requires the translation of those original new ideas into plans and strategies that will help them manifest in accordance with some kind of hopefully positive metric about providing more value for society. At least that's how I think about it. So how do we benefit the world? That was always, by the way, just to back up even further, when I thought about, well, what do I want to do in my life? I always had two really simple criteria that were just there right from the beginning. And the first one was I wanted to do something that I would love to do, that I would be passionately engaged in, that would benefit me and help me grow as a human being. And it also had to be something that would help other people, that would be of service to other individuals, to communities, and to the world overall. So when I began, those were my driving motivations, and I didn't write them down because I didn't have to do a mission statement or a purpose statement, because I always knew that that's what my purpose was to do something that I love, that I could learn, and that would be helpful to others. So really, creativity, innovation, communication, presentation, all of the things I've written about have been flowing from that original intention, which has been unwavering now for many decades.
Well, it's quite apparent that beyond the Industrial Revolution, our societies have stifled creativity. Just picking up from where you left off with creativity. In order to be able to be creative, we have to be able to function with our right side of the brain as well as the left side of the brain. And we seem to have left one side behind, thinking math and science is all. And so I agree with you that trying to be creative is using your whole brain, not just half of it. And how do we get there? Now, you mentioned you have authored many books, many intriguing books, and they are kind of all interwoven in one leads to another. So they're not independent, but they are per se. And you just launched your, published your latest book, September 8th of 2020, titled Mastering the Art of Public Speaking. You probably have a copy there. Show us. There you go. There you go. Why did you choose this topic and why is it important?
Well, public speaking, presentation skill is probably the most useful skill to develop to strengthen your influence over the course of your career. I say that your presentations become more important as you become more important. Mm-hmm. And to become more important, you have to learn to give better presentations. And it's a funny thing. I work with lots of executives. Actually, I've been doing this long enough that I work with people who have started out as high potential people, and then they became an executive vice president, and then they became CEO, and then they are on boards of directors, and now they're retired. And then I've started with the next generation, and I'm on my third generation of fast track, high potential people who are becoming executive VPs and CEOs and on their way to being on various boards. And then they'll retire, but I'm not retiring. And part of what I work with a lot of those people and helping them develop their presentation skill. Mm-hmm. And so when I say that it really helps you become more important, this is not just something I read in one of these books. This is my experience of helping people prepare for critical presentations that proved to be milestones in their careers and led to their ability to be influential at the next level. And you know, I also, for my senior executive clients, I also serve as a speechwriter. I don't always write the whole speech, but they send it to me to make it. One CEO recently asked me if I could make him sound more like Winston Churchill. Okay. And because I do a lot of writing over the years, I can do that very quickly. And I know the people I'm working with, I know their voice. So I don't put in my words. I tune into them and what I know they're really aiming to say. And I can suggest words or phrases to them. I also don't let any of them use cliches, which although they can find a little bit challenging at first, they realize that it's very helpful to have fresh, clear expression of your own ideas, to discipline yourself to avoid the use of cliches. There's a whole chapter in here, which is actually my favorite chapter of the book, called Words Matter. Mm-hmm. So what's fascinating, though, is these same people, as I just expressed, can delegate what's written in their name to speechwriters and staff and so on. But you can never delegate standing up and giving the presentation. You've got to do that. And when you do that, we're all looking at your body language. We're all listening to your voice tonality. We're looking at your facial expression. We're looking at your eyes. And we're noticing the resonance, the alignment, the integrity between the words that you say and your body language. And if there's any discrepancy, people will believe your body and your voice tone rather than the words that you say. So what this demands is an alignment between what we'd like to express and who we really are. And that is where the discipline and the art of public speaking, when I talk about mastering the art of public speaking, it's not just a few tips and techniques to overcome fear and make it easier, which of course there's plenty of that, but it's more about how do you find your real true voice and how do you learn to express it in an authentic way? And that, of course, is much more than just a business or success skill. That's something that helps you become a more balanced, individuated, creative, and fulfilled human being.
And in a leadership position, you're getting the job done through others, through the rest of the organization. So being able to impact them in a way that they understand, they feel your passion, they understand what you're communicating, then they're armed to be able to deliver the results. As when message is convoluted or not exciting enough, or it's not formulated in a way that people leave more confused than before they had heard the message, then that leads to dysfunction.
Very much so. Very much so. So, because that's the thing is in leadership, what you say and do ripples out, and for better or for worse. Emotions are contagious, for better or for worse. So as a leader, you have to be really careful what you catch and what you spread. And it really is so that just like children watch their parents for any discrepancy in their messaging.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with people in an organization. If there's any discrepancy, people will notice it. So the challenge is to find a deeper alignment. And my friend Jim Clausen wrote this wonderful book called Level 3 Leadership. Jim and I taught together at Darden Business School. We taught a course called Leading Innovation together for more than 10 years. And Jim's book starts with these words. Leadership is about managing energy, first in yourself and then in others. And one of the ways you manage energy is through mastering the art of public speaking.
Yes, and it's important to specify or explain that art of speaking is not to just get up and talk to hundreds of people. Even when you are communicating one-on-one or with a small group within your organization, you're having a meeting in the executive offices with 5 people, or you're actually leaving a voicemail for someone. All of this requires the same skill. And I remember I took presentation skills training way back in my career years ago. And it was interesting to hear, even when you leave a voicemail for someone, you are presenting. And it's so important to be concise and formulating clear and make sure that you are also infusing that energy that you want the other person to feel from the message. And sometimes that's where that's left off to guessing because we're not aware of it. Now, you do work with CEOs, executives, and on, just potential upcoming leadership. Fear of public speaking is something that all of us feel. It's not a Um, Even the CEOs of high-powered organizations, very, very large organizations, still have the same fear, at least at the beginning, until they master it. And one of the objections that I hear from people is, well, not even objections, the quest to discover is, how do I overcome this fear? What is your message? How do you help them understand it?
Well, yes, thank you for asking that, because that's what everybody's first question usually is. Well, this sounds great, and I'd love to be more authentic, and I'd love to be more important, and I'd love to manage energy, but I'm terrified. And the subtitle of the book is 8 Secrets to Transform Fear and Supercharge Your Career. So you notice I say transform fear.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is fear is energy, it's excitement. And there's a simple cognitive shift that we coach people to make, which is to view what they used to call fear as excitement. And making that label shift begins to change your attitude and your response to these physiological sensations. Some people call them butterflies. They say, I get butterflies in my stomach. And it's quite amazing the remarkable roster of famous actors and business speakers who started out terrified of presentation, terrified of public speaking, who were caught up with the butterflies, who then learned to reframe that fear as excitement, as enthusiasm. And I talk about it in terms of getting the butterflies to fly in formation. Mm-hmm. And the first step in transforming the fear is just to notice it, accept it, and understand that it's quite common and that this is energy. And we're going to learn how to now manage that energy and redirect that energy. And there's lots of strategies for doing that. The first is just cognitive. It's a cognitive psychology therapy, which is to reframe how you view it. There are lots of practical methodologies for literally changing your physiology before you speak. I say, get out of the can and give yourself a dose. So CAN stands for cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine. Those are the stress hormones that are racing through our system when we're getting cotton-mouthed and tight and choking up. DOSE is my acronym for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, which are the happiness chemicals, the love chemicals, the high performance flow state biochemicals. And the good news is we now know how to get out of the can and give ourselves a dose. And there's lots of different ways to do it. So in the book, I share with my readers all of the ways that I have learned and taught other people to do this, because it helps to have multiple strategies. Mm-hmm. If for some people, one of the simplest thing you can do is, let's say you have to give an important presentation. Maybe it's on Zoom in the afternoon in the current environment, or maybe it's live. I just gave a live presentation the other day at the Gabelli Business School. Whatever the format, whatever the situation. If on that day, earlier in the day, you do an intense workout, an intense physical workout, whatever you like to do, ride your Peloton, take a yoga class, go for a run, lift some weights, whatever it is, just do 100 burpees. But I'm serious, when you work out, you change your physiology dramatically, you metabolize the can hormones, you start accessing the dose hormones, and you feel better. You'll walk into, whether you're sitting down in front of your Zoom or walking in front of a room, you'll feel looser, freer, less constrained, because you just, so this, like, that's as simple a tip as you could get, is just do a workout earlier in the day. You'll find that you're much more relaxed when you give your presentation. Now, there's a lot more things that you can do, not to mention that maybe the greatest thing you can do to get the butterflies to fly in formation is focus on why you're doing this, and have a really well-organized presentation, and be sure you remember what you're going to say. Because guess what? If you don't know what you're talking about, you probably should be nervous. If you haven't prepared, yeah, you should be nervous. You're wasting everybody's time. So don't give a presentation without preparing. It's so simple. The reason people don't do that is they say, I'm afraid of presenting. I don't want to think about it. So it's like their homework. They don't think about it. And then all of a sudden they're cramming the night before, and they're all wound up and marinating in their stress hormones. So I give you lots of really practical, proven strategies for how to prepare in a fun, natural, easy way. So that by the time it comes to give your presentation, it's just like talking to some friends about something. You have some friends, and there's a restaurant you want to recommend to them, or there's a recipe you want to tell them about, or a movie you think they should see, and you're so excited to share with your friend. You have to see this movie. You're going to love it because X, Y, and Z. And I know you like X, Y, and Z, but the way they do, so you would never be nervous about telling your friends about why this movie is so great. You just be natural, and you want your friends to see this movie. That's your goal. Well, that's how you prepare for a presentation. It's just like you prepare to tell your friends about a movie that you love, that they're going to love.
Yes. How true is all that? Just to share a personal story. At a young age, whenever I spoke in public, it could, group of people, taking classes, doing different things, raising my hand, making a statement, or arguing a point, I used to turn absolutely red. I mean, red. I could feel heat coming off my face. So the first step, and I'm a type A personality, so, I got to conquer. The first was the awareness. Why is this happening? Beyond that awareness, I discovered it's a physiological effect or side effect of the stress I was feeling. Am I going to make a fool of myself, right?
Sure.
So I learned, if before I spoke, I took cleansing breaths, deep breath, and exhale slowly, it just took care of it. So first was awareness for me, then discovering what helps me get over that. And even today, I know I get in front of hundreds of people and speak. If I'm caught off guard, I have to do the same thing. It still comes back. So having that awareness and finding the technique that helps us truly is amazing. It helps us tremendously. Now, if you were going to just name specific skills that are most important in mastering, being a master at public speaking, what are those specific skills?
Well, just before I go into them, I just want to comment on what you said about what you learned about cleansing breaths. Let's see, page 113, page 140 is filled with those kinds of practices, including taking cleansing breath, focus on the exhale.
Right.
But there's another important thing to say here too that helps people. Mm-hmm. You were turning red, and it felt to you like there's all this heat coming off and potential embarrassment, and you had to try to re-regulate your physiology. And you learn one of the simple, most elegant, powerful, effective ways, which is bringing your attention to your breathing, slowing it down, breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, breathing into your lower belly, lower back, lower ribs, instead of into the chest, which is associated with the cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine.
Right.
As soon as we
Yes.
just shifts everything just like that. However, there's another thing that will be helpful for people to understand, and that is, it's a very reassuring thought. The audience doesn't really care and isn't worried about whether your face is red or not. They probably don't even notice. All they care about is, will this help me? Has this person put some time and thought and energy into something that is going to help me in whatever the topic area is that I'm coming to this presentation for? So it's a simple, again, it's a cognitive psychology shift to realize that the way you think you feel, the way you do feel, but the way you think you look is not how you're perceived. You think that it looks like your hair is on fire, and maybe you're going to put on picking up a book, and your hands are shaking. You think you look like this, and the audience doesn't even notice it.
Right.
So this is a really important thing to get, is that even though we do a lot of practice to center ourselves and cleansing breaths, and I teach Qigong exercises and theater exercises in the book that I've been teaching to people for years that really, really work, but it's not about you, the presenter. It's always about the audience.
Right.
So one of the simplest things is you shift your attention to the audience. And then before every presentation, you write down specifically, what do you want them to know? How do you want them to feel? And what do you want them to do as a result of your presentation? So what do you want them to know? Write it down, be specific, and KISS. Keep it simple, speaker. Right? So what's the one thing you want people to know at the end of your presentation, such that if they're walking out of the room or they just shut off their Zoom and now they're on the chat, and we ask them, what did you learn from this talk? You know what you want them to respond, and you're going to make sure that they will get it. So what do you want them to know? How do you want them to feel is very important and often overlooked, especially in business presentation. Because people buy on emotion and they justify with fact. And since emotions are contagious, if you know how you want them to feel, you will project that emotion to them, and they're more likely to feel that way. And when your feelings are aligned, you're in the state of what we call rapport or simpatico. And when you're in rapport or simpatico, everything works out better and you're not nervous anymore. And what's the actual purpose of the presentation? You either want them to do something or stop doing something. You either want them to buy something or get them to buy into an idea or click somewhere or sign a petition. Whatever it is, be really clear, what is it you want them to do? So this is, and here's another really powerful point. What I'm explaining to you, everything I'm explaining to you, this is how professional presenters think. I'm a professional presenter for 40 years. That means people pay me to speak. I've been earning my living primarily by speaking, by giving keynote speeches and leading seminars for 40 years. So I am really am a real professional speaker. I'm trying to work out how to get paid by the word.
Yes.
But the point is this, that most people who need to improve their public speaking are not going necessarily to go into a career as a professional public speaker. So your goal may not be, I want to just go give keynote speeches. No, you just want to be better at running your division or your department or your startup or whatever it is. You want to be better at communicating across the board because you see how critically important it is to your success. And if you begin right now to think of yourself as a professional speaker, even if it's not what you're going to do per se to make a living directly, think of yourself as a professional, and right away, everything gets easier and becomes more fun. Because what professionals do, when you're professionals, we have a conversation, we read an article, we watch something on YouTube, we listen to a TED Talk. And because we're professional speakers, we think, wow, that's a great story. I'm going to use that in my next talk. Wow, that's a funny joke. I can use that to start my next seminar. Because our minds are always set, part of our minds are always set on, gee, I listened to that sports reporter on ESPN and they used 17 cliches in 3 minutes. I'm going to be careful not to do that when I speak. Mm-hmm. So it just becomes part of your mindset to be refining your communication skills, because that's what professionals do. So if you adopt that mindset, you will find you start remembering jokes and stories, and you're not using as many cliches, and you're looking up vocabulary words, which is easier now to do than ever, and you're looking up word origins so that you actually know what you're talking about. What a wild concept, because most people are just blathering on.
That's true. Yeah, most of us want to say it quick, short, simple, move on. We don't pay attention. And I'm certainly guilty of that at times. But yes, it's a great advice to give. Now, you have another book, which is very intriguing to me, is the Healing Organization is the title. I'm reading it. Awakening the Conscience of Business to Help the World is the title. So tell us more about that. What is your core message in that book?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge my co-author, Professor Raj Sisodia, who is the founder of Conscious Capitalism and the author of the great book, Firms of Endearment, which was the first real book that gave us these business school style case studies of companies that care for the welfare of all of their stakeholders. And he calls them Firms of Endearment, which is just such a charming title.
Right.
And I met Raj because in the mid-90s, he engaged me to lead a series of 3-day seminars on creative thinking for his executive MBA students at George Mason University. And Raj sat in on all of these sessions, and we made a wonderful connection. And I was thrilled a number of years later when he sent me the draft manuscript of Firms of Endearment, because when I read his manuscript, he created a framework for what I always was doing intuitively. I always intuitively felt that if we could teach business leaders to become more creative, more compassionate, more conscious, business was the greatest point of leverage in our society. You know, in the United States, 20% of the economy is government and nonprofits. 80% is business. That's where most of the mojo is. So it always was clear to me, if we can get business leaders to be more compassionate, more conscious, more creative, that's the greatest point of leverage for making a positive difference in the world. So Raj wrote this book that set the framework. And then he connected with John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods.
Mm-hmm.
Together, they, along with some other wonderful people, launched the conscious capitalism movement. So about 11 or 12 years ago, when this was all getting going, they invited me to keynote. I keynoted a number of their first 3 or 4 conferences. I was the master of ceremonies for a couple of those conferences. And one of those conferences, the theme was the emerging role of women in conscious business.
Right.
So I was the master of ceremonies, and I had the pleasure of introducing some of the great speakers there, like Marianne Williamson and Dr. Jean Houston, Marty Barletta, other amazing women leaders. And then I gave the closing keynote, and Raj introduced me. And in the introduction, he told me something that I didn't realize until that point. He told me that it was when he was attending the seminars that he organized at George Mason, that's when he first realized that he himself could be creative. And that's part of what inspired him to write Firms of Endearment.
Oh.
So it turns out I inspired him partly to eventually write the book that inspired me. So at that point, we said, we've got to write a book together. So over the last 10 years, Raj and I kept meeting and talking about, how do we bring together all of his research into conscious capitalism, Firms of Endearment, and all of my work in helping people be more creative, conscious, and compassionate. Mm-hmm. And we both realized that the next evolution of conscious capitalism was this idea that organizations need to do more than just stop ruining people's lives, stop destroying the environment. Organizations need to take the lead in actually helping to heal our society, to heal people. And healing means return to wholeness. Yes. Return to wholeness. So we together decided, let's call this book The Healing Organization, and let's profile companies that are really doing this, that are creating environments that people love. Customers love them, clients love them, employees love them, vendors love doing business with them, communities love having them there. Mm-hmm. They're benefiting and blessing the world by what they do. And if you're into business, here's the part you're going to love the most. They're more profitable.
Yes.
They're more profitable. You make more money. You make more money by caring for all your stakeholders. So once you get that, why would you do anything else? So the Healing Organization, the heart of the book are these stories of these companies that are really doing this, as well as a major overview of how we got in this mess and how we can get out of it.
Right.
And then the last section of the book is how you can actually practice this yourself in your own endeavor.
Right. The ability for an organization to excite and engage their human capital, to bring their whole self to work every day is tremendous. I mean, they solve a lot of problems by just doing that. A lot of problems that they keep on throwing money at that never gets fixed will be fixed if they only engage their creativity and individual interest, as well as capabilities, right? The mental capabilities. Work is more than just taking a paycheck home. We spend more time. I did my dissertation for my doctoral work on spirituality at workplace, which is really the foundation of whole self. How do employees and what are their benefits, and so on. It's amazing how simple things are omitted. So, yeah.
Well, we get people to rethink the purpose of business.
Right.
Because most people still say, well, to make money, but it can't be it. And it's not what Adam Smith intended. When he wrote The Wealth of Nations, which is the basis for a lot of how we think about contemporary capitalism, it was predicated on his previous work, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. And it was designed to optimize the common good. And actually, Adam Smith was particularly focused on helping to uplift and create opportunity for people who are outside of the privileged upper classes, to create the amazing transformational effects that capitalism is capable of. And the truth is that even unconscious capitalism has raised the standard of living around the world at a level that might have been almost unimaginable 500 years ago. I mean, the number of people lifted out of abject poverty is stunning, and it continues to grow. However, there's still too many people in abject poverty, or there's still too many people, in the US, the greatest economy and capitalist experiment in human history thus far. There's remarkable prosperity and abundance, but there's also unacceptable levels of depression, of obesity, of gun violence. The suicide rate in the United States of America is rising in just disastrous, tragic ways. So in the book, we use the classic line from Dickens: it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And we need to keep doing that which promotes the best of times for those lucky enough to be experienced the best of times, but extend and expand that wisdom to be more inclusive and caring for those who aren't benefiting from it. And we can do that. The left-right divide is a misunderstanding of the core question. Because, too many people on the right just say, well, business is business, and it's about profit, and if you make profit, everything will take care of itself. Well, that's obviously not true.
Correct.
You destroy the environment, you ruin people's lives. It's not true. You get levels of obesity, you get suicide, you get addiction, you get misery. It's not true. On the other hand, people on the left say business is completely evil. We need to take it over. Profit is evil. Well, that's not true either. It's just not true. Business has done amazing things for the world, and will continue to do. We just have to align business with a higher purpose, fundamental human values of kindness, of caring, which is the aspiration of every person who states their aspiration publicly from every tradition. Pretty much says something along these lines. Whether they're religious, if they're religious, love is the main teaching of whatever their religion is on the positive side. If they're atheists, atheists pride themselves on, well, we came up with love without anybody telling us about it. It's it's a natural evolutionary expression of the fact that we're all in this together. But love is not just something for your children or your immediate family. There's a great thing from the original Americans. They say it matters not the name of God, for love is the true God of all the world. So why not infuse business with love? Why not? We say places people love to work, America's most loved workplaces. Well, why not? Why would you not want to work in one of the most loved workplaces? And if you have a workplace, why would you not want to make it one of the most loved workplaces? Especially when you read the data. that Raj has put together with his teams of graduate students that shows that organizations organized around love make more money.
Yes. And consistent, sustainable.
Sustainable, consistent.
Yes.
And then you see, so now you're getting why. So here's the big dream and the vision and the ideal. Here's how you get people to buy into it. You have to develop your ability to talk about this.
Right.
So you see the method to the madness in how these books all come together.
Right. Yeah. So it's really, whether you're religious, not religious, spiritual, which really is different than being religious. At the end of the day, if you can connect with your higher self, and you only connect with your higher self if you are experiencing elevated emotions. So the love, compassion, care, and as such. And it's truly amazing that when we do that, people will move mountains. If we lead with that at heart, and that doesn't mean that you are, for a while, the keyboard, the buzzword was you have to be transformational. Yes, that's all great. Transformational, exciting, enthusiastic, or all of that is great. Yes. On the other hand, you have to be transactional. Well, that's important too. You got to bring the two together. Number one, and then lead from your higher self. Then you see amazing things in the organization.
Well, this is what you're express something that we do often tend to see, which is people who talk about transformation and higher purpose, but don't pay attention to the details, don't actually run the business, don't actually look at the books.
Right.
And this talk of a higher purpose has to be grounded in fundamental. What we found, what's really interesting, is what Raj and I found, is that the people we interviewed, the people we featured in the book, are very skilled in the transactional elements of running a business. They know they have to be. That's how you ground and make the higher purpose something that can come to life. So it's not an either or, just like you referenced earlier about creativity. You need to use both modalities of the mind, the logical, analytical, and the imaginative, intuitive. If you're just logical and analytical, you're very good at measuring everything, and you're very good at transactions, but you're always doing the same thing, and you're not adapting to change, and you're probably not innovating. If you're just doing imagination and intuition, you might be having elevated feelings, but you're going out of business because you're not paying attention to profit and loss. So the ability to harmonize, to move between these two modalities. Actually, that's what I teach people in this book. That's what How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci is all about. And I actually have Leonardo da Vinci right here.
Very nice.
And he says, yes, very important to use your whole brain. Art and science need to be integrated. And again, these are skills that people can learn. So my passion is help people craft the vision, the mission, the values that are aligned with the highest human aspirations, with human flourishing. Then think creatively about how to make that work. Then communicate effectively to get people to buy in to your vision.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I feel I can go hours and hours and just continue this conversation, but I'm going to ask you one last question. Our listeners are mostly business owners, particularly small business, small to medium size. and you are very successful in leading your own organization, starting off and where you are today. If you stop and think, I wish I had put XYZ in the system before. A couple of different systems, processes, anything that you could give as an advice to our audience, that what would you go back, even though you have a successful practice, what would you go back and reconsider and infuse into your business sooner than later?
Well, I'll give you a true confession. I would have infused business into my business.
Great. Tell us more.
Because I started out, I told you, I was very clear about healing myself and healing the world.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about the business side, much of it at all. And actually, when I started out, I partnered with a group, and I went all over the world. They sent me all over the world to do these seminars, and I didn't even know what an invoice was. I just thought they'd pay me. I didn't know I had to send them a bill, because I was just, I studied psychology and philosophy and spirituality and meditation, and then businesses started to ask me to do stuff. So yes, I would have infused business into my business earlier on. That's what I would have done.
Yes, excellent, excellent advice, because most startups, small businesses are started by someone who's passionate about what they do, but business is not a part of it. Even in medical practice, I know my general practitioner, she says, I just want to see patients. I don't want to deal with business. But of course, that's your business. So if you can't deal with it, so that's great advice. Thank you so much. Is there something that I haven't asked that you feel our audience should know today?
Oh, wow. Well, like you said, how much time do we have?
Oh, gosh.
So I'll give you one thing, one simple thing.
Okay.
You haven't asked me about the time I met Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones.
Yes, I didn't know about it. Please tell us.
So I worked my way through graduate school as a professional juggler. Mm-hmm. And I used to do children's parties. I used to perform in a nightclub in London. And my juggling buddy and I used to practice every Sunday in Hyde Park. And one day we were practicing, and a gentleman approached us and said, I'm with the Rolling Stones tour, and we need jugglers because we have a carnival theme for this year's tour. Are you guys available to come to Earl's Court tonight? We'll pay you 50 pounds. We need you to juggle. So we said, sure. So that night we were on stage in front of about 15,000 people with Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. And we got invited to the parties. And then they invited us to the Nebworth Rock Festival, where we juggled in front of an audience of more than 100,000 people on a stage shaped like Mick Jagger's mouth.
Okay.
And the highlight of our act was we would juggle a rubber chicken, mm-hmm. turnip, and a juggling ball. And we would each do this, and we juggle them, and at the end we'd throw up the turnip and catch it on the fork. And it looked really cool. So we're doing this in front of 100,000 people, and we both missed.
Wow.
So early in my career, I had the opportunity to have 100,000 people laughing at me, which was very good to overcome the fear of embarrassment, because after that, then somebody threw the turnips back up. We synced it up. We did it again. It was perfect. And I'll never forget the cheering of the crowds. Bring on the Stones. Get these guys off the stage. So.
Excellent. Well, what an amazing experience, though, being on the stage with Mick Jagger and Rolling Stones. That is something all of our the child in us or the young in us wishes we had an opportunity to do. Thank you so much, Michael. I feel we have so much to talk about. I look forward to other opportunities to bring you back, and we can dive into these topics, or perhaps your latest publication at that point and talk about it all. So thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight and your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.